Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third grant workshop in our 3-evening series. As I said last week, I don't know what we're going to do for the rest of this week because we won't be meeting at 6 o'clock. Maybe we should meet just as a get-together. I'm Eileen Rao, the RRFC for Zone 32, and my counterpart, Ingrid Nietzsch, is with us as well. It's always great to be working with her. We work very well together. Been working like this for almost 2 years. If there are other topics you would like to learn more about, please forward your ideas to us. We are always looking for new ideas for these kinds of workshops. The session will be recorded and the links will be available on the Zones 2832 website. I sent off the 2 recording links from last week, plus the slide decks, and I think the fellow Bruce Goldson is waiting for this final one to put everything on the website. So just keep your eyes peeled to the Zone 2832 website. Tonight, we will be taking a look at Rotary grants and the areas of focus. It's going to be a closer look at the 7 areas of focus and what to plan for when you're working on a global grant project, particularly if you're the international sponsor working with someone in the host country. So welcome, everyone. And please welcome Steve Sundstrom, the Zone 32 Regional Grant Officer.
Okay, thank you everyone very much for attending this Monday evening. To learn more about global grants, we're going to take a deep dive into the areas of focus, and I hope that a lot of the information I present tonight will be useful to you going forward. So this is our final session. We're going to aim to, like I said, take a deep dive on global grants and the areas of focus. And for those of you who didn't attend the sessions last week, let me just introduce all of the regional grants officers one more time. So first is myself. I'm Steve Sundstrom. I'm the regional grants officer covering most of Zone 32. And then my colleagues here that you see on the screen are Renee Reiling. She does cover most of Zone 28. And then Cecilia Walter. She covers parts of Zones 28 and 32, as well as some others. So we get a pretty good view of different parts of the world, and we're happy to be serving your zones as well. So let's get right to it. So in this 60 minutes, we're going to cover a closer look at the 7 areas of focus. We're going to talk about planning a global grant, working with co-sponsors, and then respective area of focus tips. So quite a lot to cover. Starting with, all these areas of focus, I think most people may know, but these areas of focus were informed by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that you see there on the right-hand side of the screen. And it deals with 15 out of the 17 of those. So they're pretty closely aligned. And of course, we used to have 6, and now we have 7. I think most people know that environment was added in Program Year 2022. So I'm going to start with a very important question that a lot of people ask, is that when you're submitting a global grant application, what is typically missing from the applications that would cause the regional grants officer to contact the sponsors with additional questions? And a lot of people have, if you have applied for a global grant, this is not uncommon. So first thing is you shouldn't be too worried if that's what you receive after you submit a global grant application. It means that, we see there's some things to clarify, and we're looking for approval just as much as you are, actually. So these are the basic 4 things that I would say to make sure that your global grant application has this before you submit. And the first one there is the community assessment. And it's very important that it's not just completed or attached to the application, but that the content is very clear and it's clearly been used to design the project. Just recently, I received a very nice community assessment from Papua New Guinea, actually, a project that's going to be planned there. And so somewhat understandable, but it was handwritten. All of the information was handwritten. And so when I say content being clear in various meanings to that, I had to go back and sort of clarify exactly what was written on those pages and pages of information. But designing the project based on that community assessment, hearing the voice of the people that are going to benefit from that project, the people in the community, is very important for us to know that what Rotary will be delivering is what really is needed in the community. The second thing there is the memorandum of understanding. This is typical and it's required if you're working with a cooperating organization. We closely check that the critical pieces of project implementation are represented in the roles of each sponsor and also the cooperating organization. So that's very important to have those outlined clearly in the memorandum of understanding, and that the cooperating organization is agreeing to do their part, which is often a really critical piece to these projects that have a cooperating organization. So this one is signed by the primary contacts typically. That's what we usually look for. Sometimes people will ask if it's okay for the club president to sign. That's acceptable. But we intend for it to be the primary contact on the global grant that's named, usually the author sometimes too, as well as a representative from the cooperating organization should be signing that. The third thing is quotes, pro forma invoices for budget items. So not only do we ask for the budget table in the application to be filled out, but you'll see that there's a place to attach a spreadsheet, for example, or pro forma invoices, quotes that show evidence of the cost estimates being done. And of course, we want to avoid any conflict of interest. We're looking for a fair request for proposals to make sure that the process was fair. Sometimes people do ask if it's okay to use a vendor that is part of the Rotary family, if you will. That's one of the reasons why we ask for there to be a competitive process. Maybe at least 3 different vendors that you're comparing to make sure that that's a fair price. And then it is okay. And then the last one there is a training plan. So this we talk about often, the requirement for sustainability of all of our global grants, and a training plan often does meet that objective to build capacity, human capacity in the benefiting community, right? So it's great when there's training mentioned in the application, but even better to have that put into the foundation template, which you can find on the Global Grant web page on My Rotary. Often we'll send this template if we need clarification, if it wasn't clear in the application itself. The template outlines, questions that we have often, like who will be implementing the training, how often will the training be taking place, and things like that. We really want to avoid one-off trainings, that there is no follow-up training, because this could lead to, of course, there can be misunderstandings or false assumptions that the objectives of the grant were reached. But if there's a follow-up training, we can check for, things that still need to be clarified for the community. So that's one reason why we're looking for those really clear objectives and follow-up training. Okay, so first of all, I'll acknowledge that picture is a little bit older. This is nowadays, your regional grants officer is most likely working from home and occasionally in the office. This picture was taken when we were always in the office and we were allowed to wear jeans on Fridays. So that's why, I don't know why they put me in the front there, but that was on a Friday apparently. So most of these people in this picture are regional grants officers, payment coordinators and whatnot. And we review the applications, we send out questions when we need to clarify. And these are some tips to help you make sure that your proposal does not go off the rails, per se. So one thing to keep in mind is that our approval rate is still around 90%. That means that even if you receive a list of questions from us, we're still looking forward to approving your application if we can, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, and getting it to the point of approval. So we try to go out of our way to make sure that everything is in line. And it can be somewhat of an arduous process, but if you stick with us, we're all aiming to get the best result, I think. So when you receive that email, you're going to probably see a few things, different questions that we're asking. And the first point there is, once in a while, we are getting a reply pretty quickly. And and sometimes we get the answers we need, and that's fine. But I just want to encourage you to take time to get input from the other committee members. And importantly, if you are the international sponsor, to be contacting the host sponsor and that host community to make sure that everybody is on the same page before you reply to us. Yep. Every time I raise my hand, uh, anyway, the Zoom likes to have me raise my hand when I raise my hand. Um, so take a little bit of time to go over that before you reply to us. I would say, we're expecting a reply maybe within 2 weeks would be great. But however much time it takes you to give us a very clear answer, go ahead and take your time to give us that so that we don't get into a lot of back and forth where we're asking for further clarification on what you tell us. The second thing there is using the foundation templates, which I mentioned before. If we do send you the templates or if you have them originally, please do make an attempt to fill them out completely. That will give us the information we need to make a decision or to provide you with guidance. And then the last point there is we understand that making the application, that's part of project planning and that you do the best you can. But after approval, we understand that things don't always go as planned. So if there is a situation where changes come up during the project, contact your regional grants officer before you proceed with a change in what was proposed, especially if it's a big change in scope. We can approve a change in scope, but it's better for everybody if that is documented and really clear. So when a report comes in, we know to expect that. So just contact the regional grants officer. Usually it's the person who you received the approval letter from, to let them know that there's been a change. The next one is working with co-sponsors. And again, this is under the assumption usually that if zones 28 and 32 most usually been the international sponsor. So looking at it from that position here. An important thing is to look at the capacity of your host sponsor. And this might be something that you'd like to assume that everybody's a Rotarian, they've got things under control. But of course, in some of the countries where we're doing projects, in some of the communities where we're doing projects, we really have to be careful to understand that they may have multiple projects, some of them Rotary projects, some of them not Rotary projects happening at the same time. So you want to ask some really important questions to them as you're planning. Do they have the people and the skills that are needed to carry out the project? We really do appreciate it if the host sponsor is doing the monitoring and evaluation so that it can continue as the project proceeds, and even after the grant funds are spent, that there is somebody in the community there that can check in on how progress is going. They're also very good at helping with reporting, of course, but that is the responsibility of both the international sponsor and the host sponsor. So communicating about the reporting timeline as you're planning can be a very good practice, and getting on the same page with that host sponsor to make sure that everybody understands the foundation requirement is every 12 months, once payment is made, at least every 12 months, but maybe there's a timeline that would make more sense. How much in advance are you going to start working on it? How long will authorizations take? Sometimes these things take some time. It's really worthwhile to have that discussion. And then the fourth bullet point there in the capacity, do they have buffer capacity? Of course, these challenges come up during the project all the time. I talked about if you have a change of scope or a change in the project, do they have the agility to make the change and meet those challenges? So that's something that to be aware that sometimes one club taking on a lot of projects can be overburdened. So how many open grants do they have? How many people are in their club that are actively working on that, and help them to handle any troubleshooting? So that would be some of the things that we see come up between international and host sponsors for a grant. So the second point is readiness. And the benefiting community may say, these needs are something that we needed yesterday, and there's a push to get this approved. And of course, everybody's working towards that. But checking in with them on what their timeline is to actually start the work. If they are juggling many things at once, just making sure that maybe even through the review process, checking in with them when that target time to start the project would be. And then finally, we get this question a lot about dealing with overdue reports. How do you deal with overdue reports when you've been told it's overdue, or hopefully it's just coming due and you're trying to get ahead of it? So the key thing here, our suggestion is starting with the primary contacts. Of course, you can copy the secondary contacts and the club president. If it's hosted by a club, if the grant project is hosted by a club, the club president is going to have to authorize. So keeping them in the loop from the beginning is good practice. If you're not getting any traction there, we do recommend then, as many people on this call being a district officer, go ahead and reach out to the counterpart of that district, another district Rotary Foundation chair maybe, or the stewardship chair, and go ahead and copy your regional grants officer with any previous attempts attached to that below. So we can see sort of the progress of what's been happening, and then we can help support that. If it gets to the point where we're not getting a response, or there has been a change in the primary contact that hasn't been sufficiently communicated to the international sponsor or the foundation, we can start to reach out to, maybe it's the regional Rotary Foundation chair or coordinator, or whoever can finally reach that club and find out what's going on. So we can escalate it like that. But this is how we would recommend each step. Contact the primary contacts first, contact district officers, copy your regional grants officer, and then we can always reach out. Sorry, Eileen and Ingrid, but we would sometimes rely on the RRCs to give us a hand with some of these reporting issues, and as I'm sure you know. So now we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty numbers, I would say. And that is global grant funding overall. I just wanted to give people a look at that. We had a question last week about some of the trends that we've been seeing after the funding model changed, where we used to match cash contributions, and that was changed. We used to match district designated funds at 100%. That was changed to be 80%. And what we see here is sort of that trend over the years from when global grants came into play, and a slow increase up, and then, from 2020 to 2021, of course, we saw a huge increase, mainly because of the pandemic. We did have the trustees approve a transfer of $7.5 million from the foundation's operating reserve that year, to cover all of the applications that were coming in. And that was really a big change for the foundation. We saw 2,066 global grants approved that year. And if you compare back to the matching grants before global grants were put into place, the final year of matching grants, we had 2,215 matching grants. So that compared to 2,066 global grants in 2020, 2021, we were back up at the same level, when one of the objectives with global grants was to have larger grants, but a fewer number of them. So I think this also precipitated some of the changes that we saw that year. And then we did see a decrease, you'll see then in 2022. But one thing to keep in mind here is we still have, as of now, about 3,451 global grants open, give or take. So a lot of those that were approved are still open, and a lot of clubs are still going through the reporting process on progress reports, final reports to handle those, and maybe not taking on new global grants. So that would be another reason why we're not seeing them continue to increase, but also that we want to have it be somewhat of a more sustainable level of, again, ideally, a larger grant award and fewer grants to be managing all at the same time, just as our membership and our staff and everything to have something more manageable. So that's somewhat to answer some questions that came up last week, but I think relevant for everybody here to know about that. Compared to January last year, our approvals this year are actually up 30% compared to last January. So we're on track. We're doing well with that. We have plenty of world funds still to award. And then the last thing is we did a survey, the Programs and Offerings Survey in 2023, and the results were very good. 93% of members find it very or rather important. Global grants are a very or rather important part of their experience as a Rotary member, and 91% of members are either very or rather satisfied with the Global Grant program. So we're seeing good feedback on the program, but of course we're always trying to improve and make it better. So that's what we're going to look at here. That's those numbers. So here we have global grant funding by the area of focus from 2014 through the program year 2023. And we can see that disease prevention and treatment is the highest awarded in terms of total funding, and followed by the others. Environment, of course, just came into being an area of focus in program year 2022. So that number is smaller, not because it hasn't had that full time to build up, but we're seeing some rapid increase, and we'll take a look at that in more detail here. So also I wanted to show you this slide on global grant funding by region. Again, this is from 2014 through 2023 program years. And we see it's pretty well dispersed throughout the world. We don't have the Americas split up there by North America, South America, and a majority of that would be South America, of course. But we see a good division of funding. And now I want to get into each disease prevention, each area of focus, starting with disease prevention and treatment and maternal and child health together, because these are managed by the same area of focus manager. So we'll take a look at these somewhat together. So first is just looking at disease prevention and treatment. Again, that high total of 369.8 million in total funding, 5,202 grants. You'll see there up at the top. And this Rotary area of focus, I think most people are probably familiar with this one since it's the most popular. But here it's reducing the causes and effects of disease and strengthen the healthcare system. And all these subcategories underneath that of what this area of focus can accomplish. We see improving the capacity of local healthcare professionals. We're working with communicable and non-communicable diseases, strengthening healthcare systems. We're looking at that fourth one, they're providing clinical treatment and rehabilitation for physical disabilities, clinical being the key word there, actually. And then, of course, scholarships that we were talking about even before our meeting started are a major part of all of our areas of focus. So let's take a look at this slide broken down by project type. And I just highlighted there at the top of this slide, you'll see it says from Rotary year 2018 to 2023. That's because we were able to start categorizing our areas of focus by project type once we started getting a feel for what our members were interested in and implementing. So non-communicable diseases is by far the one that receives the most amount of funding, at least. And you'll see number 3 is communicative and vector-borne diseases. Somewhat makes sense because you can sort of get ahead of non-communicable diseases for prevention, whereas communicable, it's a little harder to plan for that, I suppose. Medical equipment purchase continues to be something that we see a lot of, and I'll have some recommendations on how to improve your applications for all of these things. And you can see right there in the middle, graduate scholarships, over 17 million has been awarded for this disease prevention and treatment scholarships so far under global grants. And I wanted to show this slide really quick just to show that the trends over time, disease prevention and treatment did get the biggest bump in the 2021 program year, of course, in response to COVID and the pandemic. There were a lot of projects that were approved under this area of focus, no surprise. For maternal and child health, we see, of course, this is much smaller, but it's part of, the same healthcare system, essentially. 957 grants over time, compared with over 5,200 with disease prevention and treatment. But still a very important area of focus, of course. looking at neonatal and newborn mortality. This is for any children under 5. That's the level that makes it qualify for maternal and child health. And then the maternal population themselves, access to, midwives and other healthcare workers related to this, and then of course scholarships. And again, we were able to break down these by project type starting in 2018, and you can see not quite as easy to divide some of these, but maternal health being the top one, medical equipment purchases coming after that, graduate scholarships, again, kind of right there in the middle, a little over 3 million. And then for some tips, disease prevention, treatment, and maternal child health tends to be pretty straightforward. But one thing that we often have to go back to sponsors to request is to ask for a letter of support from a hospital or health authority. And this is often because we're working with the healthcare system in that country. We need to know that they're ready for some new equipment or some new addition to what services that they're providing. The training is often taking place at that healthcare center, if it's a clinic or a hospital. And so getting that letter from them can really be helpful for us to know that it's all systems go. That can sometimes take place in the form of the memorandum of understanding, but sometimes the hospital might be more of, they're not so much a cooperating organization, but they can issue a letter, and that can streamline things a little bit. So that would be one thing to obtain when you submit, attach that to your application. Then for equipment, looking at maintenance and operation plans, one thing we definitely want to avoid is having our equipment not maintained or being able to operate over, at least 5 years, hopefully 10 years or longer. We've had cases where there's reports of the voltage and whatnot not lining up with that country where the equipment is being sent to, something like that. So having a close look at the maintenance and operation plans, the financial sustainability that you're able to maintain whatever is introduced. Continuity of service and training plans. This is very important, of course. If you are going to start supporting a population, whether it's communicable or non-communicable diseases, that service can continue once people begin treatment, that it's not cut off after a period of time. And then we do see some new divisions or new hospitals, and if that is the case, getting a certificate of operation, knowing that it's ready to go, so that we don't approve the grant and then find out that the hospital's not going to be in operation and we have to dial things back. That happens from time to time. So if it's a new division or even a new hospital, providing us with a certificate might be something we ask for. And then right before I pause here, I just wanted to give an example of a project actually that, a series of projects, I should say, that I've been involved in approving these applications under disease prevention and treatment. And this is Give Every Child a Future, and it takes place in 9 different Pacific Island countries, and it's to introduce 3 new childhood and adolescent vaccinations. This was a goal by Australia and New Zealand as part of their 100 years of Rotary, their centenary in 2021, and their aim to introduce these vaccines to 100,000 children and adolescent girls. So this, we were able to approve the first applications in 2020. They were able to raise $3.9 million. That included over 800,000 in district designated funds, over $1 million in cash contributions, and nearly $1 million in matching funds through the World Fund from the Rotary Foundation, as well as some other contributions. And they are on track to achieve all the goals that they have planned. This was partnering with UNICEF, so it's one of our bigger projects, but they had to do this through global grants. It's not a programs of scale, and this has taken, because it's 9 different countries, they had to submit an application for each country. So the Rotarians did quite a lot of work, over 23, or I believe it is 23 separate global grant applications to carry this project out. And it's still in process now. So I'm just going to quickly pause and see if there are any quick questions from the audience. I see Ron. I don't know if I can see everybody. Ron, go ahead.
Question about areas of focus. On our grants, we ask people to come up with a primary focus rather than multiple focuses to make it easier. But next year, I know our district, as well as several others, are going to try to become peace and conflict resolution districts where we need to allocate $25,000 of DDF. I think that's going to create a bias where people will start reclassifying areas of focus because many of these areas of focus overlap. They all lead toward peace and conflict resolution directly or indirectly. I'm just wondering how we're going to handle that going forward. Do we write $25,000 worth of matching global grants that its primary focus is peace and conflict? And do we then have this area of concern about skewing the focus?
Well, I don't mean to speak for our area focus manager for peace building and conflict prevention, but I think we would welcome more applications under that area of focus. It's certainly it's been mentioned that our incoming Rotary International president is very interested in that area of focus, but we care about all the areas of focus. So we really do look at what the objectives are in the project itself and help to guide our sponsors if it's leaning towards one over the other or there's more than one. We do have to review for each area of focus. Having one primary area of focus is really beneficial to have the most impact. That's what we have found. But if that's peace building and conflict prevention, then I don't see any problem with having that increase.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I did get a question in the chat, I believe. Does the application require 3 quotes? For the most part, yes, we're going to require 3 quotes wherever possible. There are times when you're working in a country where, or you have an item that it's hard to obtain 3 quotes. If you can justify that, we can take a look at that on a case-by-case basis. But in most cases, we're looking for 3 quotes to make sure that we're getting a fair price and you've done your due diligence. And then if pictures and videos can be uploaded to applications, yes, they can. We do have a supporting documents section now that attachments can be uploaded. I would say one thing to be aware of is, is this necessary for us to understand if it's eligible or not, I guess, to just try to streamline our review process. But the other thing is be careful of, especially for disease prevention, treatment, and maternal, child, and health, names or pictures of children or, connecting patients with their medical information. Do not upload that information. That really needs to be kept private. So things like that I would just advise against. But yeah, pictures, videos can often be very helpful. And that includes in reports as well. I don't know if Joan Arsenal is on the call, as I just had a look at a video that she uploaded with her report on a grant. And it was great to see Rotary in action through some of the videos that come in. So I'm going to continue through. We have a lot more content to get through. Okay, the next one I'm going to talk about, we were just talking about peace building, conflict prevention, and I'm also going to talk about basic education and literacy first. So for this one, starting with basic education and literacy, this one you can see 91.5 million total funding during global grants. So Rotarians have been doing great work in this area, over 1,442 grants to improve sustainable access to basic education and literacy for all people, looking at strengthening the abilities of communities to provide basic education and literacy to all. It used to say access, but we were getting some, probably not too many, but we were getting some applications requesting roads to schools or buses to get children to schools. It wasn't so much literal access, but the ability, more like teacher training and things like that. So they changed the wording a little bit. It also includes adult literacy. So not only for children, but adult literacy as well. Reducing gender disparity in education, that has proven to be something that we see. And then, of course, the scholarships again, and to show you the breakdown. So we do see quite a lot of teacher training, and then the technology that comes along with it quite a lot. If you happen to see the webinars that we've had recently on this area of focus, they talk a lot about how technology alone does not solve as many problems as we would like it to, but combining it with teacher training has proven to be very successful. So we also see graduate scholarships there, nearly 5 million. We do see quite a lot of scholarships under this area of focus. So some good subcategories here. And then for peace building and conflict prevention, this is looking at transforming conflict, building peace, training community members, working with vulnerable populations into a society to help integrate them. This is, of course, something that we see worldwide. Improving the dialogue in the community, even to determine how to best manage natural resources. That would be an eligible project type. And then again, the scholarships. And looking at the breakdown of this one, actually, we do see the highest amount in graduate scholarships. And maybe this is because we also have the Peace Fellowships, which is a separate program. So in addition to that, we get a number of global grant scholarship applications for peace building and conflict prevention. And then some of these others. So as I was saying before, if we were to increase the number of applications that we get for this area of focus, we would welcome that. And some tips, I put these two together because really for both of these areas of focus, we're looking at investing in people. Really, in a lot of ways for all the areas of focus, that's true, but even more so for these. We're looking for really close collaboration and involvement with cooperating organizations, whether it's schools or nonprofits that are on the ground working with the community, understanding the conflict on the ground if it's PCP. We're looking for a co-creation of any curriculum or training so that from time to time we are seeing our sponsors that are introducing some kind of a curriculum or training, but that needs to be vetted by the community that would be implementing it, that would be using it, right? And ideally co-creating it with them, maybe adapting it to the community if something is introduced externally. Maybe it's a standard, an international standard, but the more that we see that adapted to the host community, the more likely it's to be used for years to come. The measurement for these areas of focus can be nuanced, but that's okay. We're not only looking for quantitative, but qualitative information when we're looking at that input, output, outcomes, and then impact. You can start looking at that in different ways. And then just forming a committee of professionals for measurement, evaluation, monitoring, and not just depending on one person. Sometimes that can become an issue, especially if you're sending in a volunteer traveler. You're allowed 2 travelers if there is not someone in the host community that is available to provide some special skill. 2 people from outside of the community can travel as part of the grant budget. But depending on external people or having only one person in the community trained, of course, you're at risk of that not being sustained. And then the last point there, this is for basic education and literacy, is if you're working with multiple schools, a community assessment needs to be done for each school. So we want to look at what's the student population, for example, broken down by male and female. That can also come to play when it's water and sanitation if you're looking at putting in bathrooms, right? But we often want to look at the student body, the teachers that are there, what staff are available. Those are your local resources, and they're usually limited. So for each school, we want to have an assessment and a breakdown when you're applying for these grants. These are actually some examples from your zones. The basic education and literacy project that I found was out of District 5550. That was a few years ago, and hosted by the Rotary Club of Nipawin Passport. So to provide decodable phonics library systems and build literacy teacher training capacity. So really great to see some examples that you yourselves have come up with. And then one that I myself reviewed in peace building and conflict prevention out of Yonkers, East Yonkers Rotary Club, was the bullying and conflict resolution through basketball with Yonkers Dream Court. And this was, I do remember this was featured in the Rotarian magazine, where they were able to provide a basketball clinic with focus on teamwork and anti-bullying for youth aged 7 to 16. They worked with, I remember it was the Police Athletic Club. This is another example where things were slowed down with the pandemic, and I talked with the sponsors to find out that they did have enough funds to actually build a second court that hadn't been in the original application. It was within the same community. It was within scope of the project. They had the funds to do it. So we went ahead and expanded on what was already a great project to make it even better. So this one is still in process, but I would say it's a great example of something that's a little bit different for peace building and conflict prevention. But a great example of a grant that was approved. Next is community economic development. This area of focus is we see quite a bit of activity, over 104 million in total funding, 1,749 grants since we've introduced global grants. And we're looking at alleviating poverty and creating measurable and enduring economic improvements in, and the key point here, marginalized communities or poor communities. You'll see I have that bolded there. So we're of course, no surprise that with global grants, we're looking to help those communities that are really struggling. They're marginalized. They don't typically get access. So we're trying to build inroads to provide them better access to economic opportunities and services that they may not be receiving, and strengthening their resilience to natural disasters as well. I work with the Australian districts, and they have, many people might remember, similar to California, Australia had many wildfires, and they have been successful in having some global grant applications approved to meet the needs for communities there to build resilience to natural disasters like wildfires, flooding, and things like that. So that would fall under community economic development if you're protecting their access to their livelihoods. So that was a big part. So for example, we were working with a ranching community in Australia. And then of course we do get a lot of scholarship applications for this area of focus, and some really great scholars that come through looking at how to improve things in the world for our poor communities. Taking a look at the breakdown of this vocational training, it's a great area to look at how to lift people out of poverty and give them training and skills in a certain vocation. We're looking at a lot on what skills are needed in the community. What are people looking to do? Can they have a livelihood after they go through the training that might be provided in the grant activities, and then have that be sustained in the future? So that has proven to be quite popular with over 37 million in funding. Also agricultural development. I think that's something that we always like to see. And then graduate scholarships, you can see there, the third top sub project type. Also, things like microfinance. You can see some other interesting project types here for this area of focus. Some tips for this area of focus are, as I mentioned earlier, if you are doing vocational training, to attach a job development assistance plan. How really are you going to bring somebody from needing skills to having the skills, and then ultimately receiving a higher amount of income? That's what we're looking for, is income generation, whether it's through entrepreneurial skills or employment skills. If there are internship agreements with potential employers, we want to look at what that looks like. We want to make sure it's fair to the beneficiary, of course, and that usually it's that the Rotary sponsors are involved in that, right? And making sure that the employers understand what we're looking for, and that what the sponsor yourselves are looking for. The market needs and market analysis is very important. So having a marketing plan, especially if you're working in a community that is going to be developing a product, where is that product going to be sold? Is it sustainable? Is there going to be a profit? How are those profits divvied up? Things like that. We're looking for market analysis. And then If you are using a facility or there's land use involved, a letter or contract with the host sponsor or whoever owns that land will often ask for that if it's not attached to the original application. One that I'd like to highlight again that I was involved in reviewing. This is out of New York City District 7230 in Rotary Club of Chinatown, working with the Chinatown business community there. And this was during the pandemic to provide testing and capacity building training for those businesses, working along with local partners and even the New York City Police to keep the district inviting and safe. There was a lot of anti-Asian violence, but also just that commercial district struggling to keep functioning during the pandemic. So this project was approved in August 2020 and received $69,500 in total funding. And then to environment. So this is a newer one. So you'll see a little lower in total funding, 5.2 million, but that's growing. In 2021-22, we had 33 grants. Now already we have 90 grants. So it's quickly progressing, protecting, preserving, and conserving the environment. There's all sorts of sub-projects that are contained in this, and this one we really recommend looking closely at the guidelines that are available for each area of focus, but it covers a lot. We can see here's the funding compared to 2022 and 2023, so there's been a lot more interest as we go forward, and we expect more. Humanitarian and scholarships have been approved. And some of the tips that I would have are to request a preliminary review, especially for this area of focus. We have worked with clubs in your zones, and I personally have worked with two. And we did a lot of preliminary review, but I think we came to find a very good project as a result. Looking at eligibility and scope, the community assessment, the environmental assessment needs. We're looking at holistic results for this, so that's very important to look at. If you affect one part of the environment, it might have kind of a domino effect on others. So, of course, we can define the scope, but we're looking at the holistic results of how everything is impacted. Cooperating organizations need to be professional, well-established in the community. That can be important for any area of focus, especially this one. We're looking to change lifestyle and behaviors and need a comprehensive plan for that. There's an extra section in the community assessment for the environment area focus, so be sure to take a look at that. One I'll just highlight really quickly with the Rotary Club of Ipswich Rowley. This was, as far as I know, the first environmental project approved in North America. Definitely the first one that I reviewed to save the Ipswich River and watersheds. And this is an ongoing project to provide training, networking, and resources to stakeholders in the Ipswich River watershed. Fun thing is that they partnered with the Rotary Club of Ipswich East in England. And I love that collaboration between these two. And another one that was just approved in May 2023 for a $100,000 award was the Urban Environmental Restoration in New York's Hudson Valley with Rotary Club of Rhinebeck and District 7210. Another great project. We did quite a bit of preliminary review, but once it was approved, I think everybody felt great about it. And then one of our more complicated areas of focus, brought it to last. Hopefully everybody's still hanging in there. Water, sanitation, and hygiene. So $177.2 million in total funding, 2,476 grants since inception. This is increasing sustainable access to water, sanitation, and hygiene. Usually we're looking for universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water, looking at water quality, improved sanitation, community hygiene, strengthening the capacity to provide water and sanitation services, and then, of course, also scholarships. This can require a lot of additional information to make sure that the water is safe. So we might, if you're doing safe water supply, if it's coming from groundwater, we're going to require a hydrogeological test to make sure that the water is safe, potable for drinking, if that's what the purpose of it is. But as you can see, a lot of people have been successful in this, providing safe water supply, also working in schools to provide water supply and sanitation and hygiene, as well as households and so on. So this area of focus continues to be quite a big passion for many of our members. The tips for this one are to review the guidelines, of course, just like environment. This area of focus has a lot of additional requirements. So to be sure to look at those guidelines. And then there is also an extra section here in the community assessment to fill out. Most likely, if you submit an application for water, sanitation, and hygiene, we'll come back with questions and try to lead you through it. We are working to try to improve our application to provide more information up front. That's gotten, and we're trying to make improvements on our side. But of course, we want to get it right, and we're in the process of hopefully rolling that out before too much longer. So we're just at the end of almost near the end of our hour. Those are the end of my slides. And I am happy to take a couple questions or comments from the audience, and then I'll hand it back over to our hosts, Eileen and Ingrid, our RFCs. Yes, quite a bit to absorb. So, of course, this has been recorded. If anybody is wondering, yes, I will be sending these slides over to Eileen and Ingrid to be put up on your Zone website, so you can take a look at these at your leisure. So,
Steve, since I don't,
Okay.
Lauren has his hand up. Okay.
Yep.
Lauren,
Yeah,
Lauren?
Steve, I've read the guidelines relative to Adopt a Village, and right now we're currently trying to work with Ukraine to rebuild a village. Very different focus, and I know that's not kind of the language that's being used. And in war-torn areas where communities have been actually just devastated, is there a way to work around language or something? Like, we think economic impact might be the way to move this forward, in the context that if we rebuild a village, then they will build schools and hospital care and that type of stuff. So I don't know if there's any advice that you have on there. I did read the Adopt a Village, but I haven't seen a Rebuild a Village.
Right. Yeah, that's quite an undertaking. So my hat is off to you for wanting to get into that. And I think there's a way. There's going to be a need there. It will be quite an undertaking. We don't have a Rebuild a Village. Adopt a Village typically is because we're really affecting a number of different parts of a community. I remember I did approve one under Adopt a Village where they were working just with the schools, with the community center, with different businesses. And so we just said, you know what, we're working on the whole community here. When you're looking at rebuilding, you're going to have to focus on, like you said, what's going to be the initial focus of that. If it's economic, sure. If there are tensions within the community still and you need to work on that, sure. So it can start anywhere. I don't think it would necessarily have to be Adopt a Village or Rebuild a Village in that case, but just target what you want to do. Keep a tight focus on it, and we'll help you to achieve it. So we're looking for, again, for all of our areas, all of our global grants, impact. If we can make an impact, large or small, in Ukraine or in Canada or in America, we want to do that.
Last question. Anna May wants to know about return funds. How are they spent? Where do they go?
Oh, where do they go? With global grants, if it's a scholarship, you need to spend all the funds or account for them. Have the scholar let you know what they spent money on, and there's usually some things we can find. If there's $1,000 or more left over, it needs to be returned to the foundation. That will go back to the World Fund. For a humanitarian project or a vocational training team, if it's $1,000 or less, you are welcome to retain those funds without sending them back to the foundation and use them within the scope of the project purpose without reporting to the foundation. We found that at that level, it's best to just let the funds find their way to that community. So if you're returning funds to the foundation, you can find instructions about returning funds on My Rotary, but essentially you're going to be returning it to our lockbox that we have. If you're in the States, I know that's one address, and if you're in Canada, it's another one. You're going to send in a contribution form. You're going to write down the grant number, make sure that it gets to the right place and it's recorded properly. But that's essentially the process.
Thank you, Steve.
Mhm.
I'd like to, just on behalf of Eileen and I and all of us on this call, give you a big thank you. What a thorough presentation. This must have taken you hours to get this all together. I mean, the slides were so professional and so informative and so very interesting to see the range. One of the things that I noticed, you know, both our current president and our incoming president have stated mental health and peace as their priorities. And I noticed that both of those are way down when you showed us those slides in terms of grants. So that's an interesting fact, I think, for us to keep in mind. I know that many people will benefit from seeing your slides and the recordings on the website. So our heartfelt thanks so very, very much for all of this. You are amazing. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Ingrid. And if I can just reply really quickly, I'm just presenting on what all of you are doing. So thank you. This is all the work that yourselves and your fellow Rotarians are doing around the world, and now Rotaract members too. So thank you, and I really do appreciate the time that everybody's taken to be here tonight and learning together. So thank you very much, and to Eileen and you, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you, everyone, for being on with us for the last few nights. Thank you. And have a wonderful Valentine's Day next week. Don't forget. Get those cards, flowers, gifts. Thank you.